Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. I think the most important intro for me is actually the first non-bro speaker on stage today. My name is Jenju Scott, and today we're going to talk about Wired to Think. Last year, actually 2022, November, when GPT was launched, it became the first fastest application to reach 100 million users globally. But in fact, almost 200 years ago, this genius, Ada Lovelace, actually predicted that machine intelligence one day will be able to generate music, poetries. Considering 200 years ago, be able to predict this is very, very amazing. And Ada Lovelace, at 17 years old, as the daughter of the most famous poet at UK at that time, Lord Byron, she was working with Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage was a Cambridge professor in mathematics, and he created this machine called difference machine. So Ada Lovelace was the first person in this world to figure out that actually you can program machine to not only do calculation, but also create this kind of creative intelligence. But if we think about the origin, one thing Ada Lovelace and his father, Lord Byron, did not believe was that machine intelligence, no matter how advanced it develops, it will never be able to originate new ideas. So if we look at the origin of intelligence, let's go way back. James Webb camera has started looking too deep in the universe. We now know that universe is started from 13.8 billion years ago. But James Webb's images actually suggest maybe even longer than that, even earlier than that. In our solar system, actually in our galaxy, Milky Way, there are about 100 billion stars. And many of them have planets around them. And many of those planets actually within the Goldilocks area with the distance of the star. But yet, with all these stars, there's only one planet we know that has life on it. That's our planet. And on this planet, with 8.7 billion species, known species, and many of them don't have a brain. And we only understand this intelligence within confinement of the brain. And yet, there are many other species that they don't have a brain, from mycelium to octopus. We don't understand their intelligence, the source of the intelligence at all. But right now, let's focus on the intelligence that confined with our brain. There's only one species, which is us, developed this massive brain above our shoulder. This brain in our shoulder is still the most complex and most efficient computer on this planet. A few months ago, actually this just released a couple weeks ago, the researchers in Google and Harvard, they took 1 cubic millimeter of brain tissue and sliced for 5,000 slices. And they look into those brain tissues. This is one image of one neuron. And in one neuron connected with 5,600 neural fibers. And each of those fibers connected with other neurons. By the way, in our brain, we have 100 billion of those little guys. Every those neurons, synapses, neural bridges help us to take all the data we've been taking from the day we were born to the day we die, and making sense, building model to understand our world around us. And yet, we consume about 30 watts. We process about 100 trillion parameters. The most advanced, largest large language model today is about 1 trillion. And probably spend about half gigawatt to 1 gigawatt a month to power those large models. This is how efficient we are. Our brain is the most expensive organ in our body, only 3 pounds, but yet we spend about 20% of our biological budget. It must be very, very important to us. We have this fast thinking, which is much more animalistic, very ancient, very reactive. We don't really think about it. We don't know how to think about it. You don't know how our brain actually starts to detect different color, why you blink your eyes, why you wave your arms. We also have slow thinking, which is much more recent, rational and logical, and much slower. This part we know better because we can define, we can understand, and we can easier to tell a machine, this is how we process this math formula. This is how we make a decision. Our brain is also we are very sentient creatures. We're very self-aware. We have emotion. We have needs. We can self-learn. And although our mileage might vary, but we can self-learn. And also, our brain, this most efficient computer sitting on our shoulder, is the most amazing miracle of 13.8 billion years of cosmic and biological unbroken chain to evolve to what we are today. So therefore, we have all kinds of different intelligence. In terms of our ability compared to machine, we can do parallel thinking. Right now, you're thinking about, who is this woman? What she's talking about? Where's my lunch? We have infinite flexibility as well. You can learn about AI today. You go home, you can learn cooking. You can play guitar. We also can originate. Origination is very, very important. That's why in the past 200, 300,000 years, from chipping stone to make a tool to today, we can land on the different planets in our solar system. In terms of different types of intelligence, we have crystallized intelligence that retain the knowledge. We also have fluid intelligence to solve problems. We also have acquisitional intelligence for us to acquire new knowledges. And also different types of intelligence. Some people good at math, some people good at sports, some people can memorize a lot of different plants and animals. So even when we talk about human intelligence, there's no such thing as human general intelligence because there are so many different types of intelligence. So why are we constantly thinking about artificial general intelligence? Especially in movies, we always have this kind of human-like. You're completely unable to distinguish between human and machine. And they seem to be able to do everything that human can do. And they are the AGI. They are going to rule the world. The reason is very simple. We have this very strange psyche. It's very deep ingrained in our mind. It's called anthropomorphic bias. This kind of bias, to me, is actually a very peculiar type of narcissism. Because we think anyone is intelligent or anything is intelligent. It must be like human. From the beginning of the time, in those stories in legend, if a cat is intelligent, the cat can speak human language. If a tree is intelligent, the tree can understand human. So we always use us as benchmark. But what is smart or smarter than human? When we describe a human's intelligent, we often say that person can do math, probably can memorize a lot of different facts, and large amount of facts, and probably can play chess. And we say, oh, that person is very smart. But guess what? This thing can do better math than most of us. This thing can memorize much more fact with no mistake than all of us. And playing chess, computer can be better than human decades ago. So what is real intelligence? Jeff Hawkins, the creator of Palm Top, those of you old enough remember Palm Top, he actually loved neuroscience. He devoted his entire life studying neuroscience. His research institute called Numenta is doing a lot of very important research on sparsity these days. He wrote in his book on intelligence, we are intelligent not because we can do one thing particularly well, that's AI, but because we can learn to do practically anything, everything. So what I'm trying to say is not denying there will be super intelligence one day. But in fact, I think superintelligence is already among us. And this super intelligence one day with this so-called singularity will arrive, probably will arrive. But it's just not going to be using human as benchmark. When superintelligence arrives, we probably will not recognize. We don't know the method. We probably don't know the intention. Singularity is actually a term borrowed from astrophysics. It means when the laws of physics completely become chaos, you will not be able to predict it based on our existing knowledge of physics. So black hole is one of this example. Do I believe that one day AI will develop to the point that we just completely unable to predict what's going to happen? I think it might happen. But it's just not going to be this humanoid, behave like a human, talk like a human. The most terrifying AI, I think, is actually the one we don't recognize. So since last few years, maybe a year and a half, we have this major race of large language model. Large language model mostly is basically collecting enormous amount of data and through transformer to recognize patterns between different words. And this become a very centralized game because any of the large model, as I hinted earlier on, that large model requires a lot of energy to train. So the companies that truly can play the game in large language model and compete, probably we can count in one hand, maybe two hands. And in terms of transformer, the nature of transformer that it really relies on is to process. It's end of the day, it's still 0 to 1. Fundamentally, it's very different compared to our human brain. To recognize all these different patterns of the words, make connections, and then you use many different layers to confirm, and then build this understanding that comes across as understanding. But the challenge with GPT is that it fundamentally requires on statistic. Statistics is not, and logic are two different things. So this is why in symbolic AI, this is before large language model, we have the problem of Chihuahua and blueberry muffin. So Google's AI tried to do image recognition. So process, God knows how much energy consumed, and use image recognition to recognize Chihuahua. Okay, figure it out. But then they threw into blueberry muffin. AI got very confused. A human 2 years old would never make that mistake. And in our generative AI age, we also have very cute mistake like this GPT. This is the latest, the GPT 4.0. Play rock, paper, scissors. And I have no idea this concept, the common sense, right? So we can see a lot of those kind of large language model rely on statistic, but not very good at logic. Is because math, logic, and reason, it does not require consensus to be right. And yet, large language model require consensus. So often, you see GPT just talk like what I call push out this kind of plausible bullshit. And it sounds really believable, but it's completely wrong. It sounds a little bit like, often like some of my male colleagues. They're wrong, but super confident. This is one of my portfolio companies. They use generative AI to use large language model to make sense of the math problem when it's in description, but they still use their own engine to solve the logic. So if AI is not necromancer, what is AI? It's going to be the future of AI. I share a few observations I think maybe resonate with you. From what I can see, number one, what's going to happen is small models. What we are seeing right now, the world is have this, if anyone study math will know there's actually a Jensen inequality. It's a well-known problem, but right now we have Jensen inequality in terms of GPU distribution. Either it's because of geopolitical issue, or because you're open source community, or because you don't have enough capital. You just don't have access to the GPU. So one thing, you can have two ways to overcome this kind of problem. One is access to more GPU, more compute, or you can work on efficiency and using smaller data, less data and smaller model. And also, I think it's going to have local agent. Why I say this is because either you like or not, okay, this is supposed to be a video. Okay. So either you like or not, what's happening right now is there are just too much incentive for different parts of the world, different part of segment, want to have this more efficient, localized AI assistant. If you think about right now, the most primitive, not most primitive, but probably primitive and most common machine-human interaction is the phone in your hand. But you also drive. When you drive a car, your car is basically, could be your assistant as well. So a very important phenomenon happened, kind of surprised the world, is how quickly China's EV is taking over the world. China took 27 years to produce the first 10 million EV. And then from the 10 million to 20 million mark, 17 months. So if you haven't been to China for a while, I highly encourage you to go, because it's the biggest red pill you're going to take. Most of the cities, they're super quiet, because half of the street, there are millions of cars on the street, but half of the streets, all the cars are electric. So I think there's a massive incentive for a lot of those EV producers. By the way, all these EVs are basically tablets on wheels, right? So it's massive incentive for them to produce this kind of a smaller model, localized, using your own data. Therefore, your conversation in the car is highly private, but you can keep it private. So completely localized. And you have your machine-human interaction with your tablets and wheels when you get into the car. And when you get out of the car, it's basically your phone and yourself. And China has already installed more robotic arms than number 2 to number 10 add up together in the world. So this automation and this acceleration of EV, it's only going to go faster from here. This is Xiaomi's car. The first phone company in the world produced a car. Looks a little bit too much like Porsche in my taste, but it looks good. The second observation is I think data will become an asset. I've been saying this for many years, and in 2019, I gave a TED Talk about why we should get paid for our data. Because all of us generating a lot of data all the time, nonstop, and yet none of you got ever paid by Facebook or TikTok. TikToks are paying you. Now, you know, there's some, but it's not paid by your data. So in my view, in 2019, when I was talking about why you should get paid for your data, I promote this idea of universal data basic income. So UBI is a very cute idea, but UBI is very difficult to execute. So, however, if you base on this basic income on data you generate, could become a very, very good ecosystem when AI becomes very pervasive in our society. And I think that day of AI become very pervasive has already arrived. So in my view, I think internet has 3 acts. The first act was in the 1990s, when you have open information. Everybody can access information. It's all online. Second act was mainly from social media companies, GDPR. Information has become data that can be processed to target you, to evaluate, and you start to create this kind of economic value from the information you share online. The third act, this is where I think the whole Web3 world and AI world will probably converge, is where data as asset. So imagine if all this large language model, everything is really relying on everything you say online, everything you share online. Of course, you should be part of that system. And guess what? If you're not doing this, in 2021, PBOC, China's central bank, published this essay, very understated, but published this essay. I could not believe my eyes when I read towards the end of the essay. It says, the essence of digital RMB, they've been working on digital RMB since 2014. So the essence of digital RMB is to make the connection between the economic value of individuals' data to their monetary policy. So data in China has also become one of the 5 key means of production. So capital, land, technology, labor, and data. So this is coming, either we like or not. And you can either choose to be part of this very centralized ecosystem or become part of this decentralized ecosystem where your data is protected and you actually could be paid for the data you generated. The third part, I think none of those AI investment really matters. I want to do a quick poll before I move on to the next point. How many of you are building an AI company in the audience? Raise your hand. Okay, some. How many of you are building a wrapper based on somebody else's model? Okay, a couple of people. I suggest you quit because there's no point for you to do that. It will be extremely difficult to win, and right now with a very centralized model, especially with OpenAI, when they release the new solution, and you will have no defensibility. So people always say, when everyone is digging the gold, you need to sell the shovel. So NVIDIA is selling the shovel. So now becoming, on the way to become the most valuable company in the world. So my last point is AI investment is not about tech. It's about energy. Right now, it's all about energy, competing the resource of energy, cheap energy, renewable energy. This is why I'm putting together power dynamics to provide storage so energy transition can happen fast. In the coming years, data centers, compute-related and electricity consumption is going to grow exponentially. Where will this energy all come from? It's not going to be coal, and it's not going to be traditional way to generate. It's going to be nuclear and renewable. Russian astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev, he created this Kardashev scale, which is a very fascinating, deep rabbit hole you can get on YouTube. A lot of people who are obsessed about aliens getting very deep into a Kardashev scale. Kardashev scale is basically divide civilizations based on the how they use energy. So scale 1 is the type of civilization be able to harness all the energy on that planet. Scale 2 is basically the civilization be able to harness the energy from the entire solar system. And scale 3 is basically the type of civilization be able to harness the energy from the entire galaxy. Carl Sagan worked on this formula, which I share on the slide, in the 70s. Based on the 70s calculation, based on his formula, our calculation right now, human is roughly at 0.73. So we're not even 1 yet. And for any civilization going from almost 1 to 1 is potentially the most dangerous period because you require a very fundamental energy transition. What we are seeing right now in terms of compute, GPU, energy consumption, and AI is going to be what's going to shape our geopolitics in the rest of our life. So I'm going to end my talk with a story. I was born and brought up in China. In the late 90s, I was in my university studying applied mathematics. And the first batch of, at that time, most of the native English speakers, most of them are American missionaries. And of course, we're very naive. We have no idea, why they're in China, why they're talking to us about all these strange things. So one missionary, we all want to learn English, so we become friends with them. And one missionary asked me, we got very close. He said, there's something that's very powerful in this world. It's a divine power. And if you have to give that name, this power, divine, loves everyone, but also watch over you. And if you make a mistake, will send you to hell and can punish the entire, humanity. If you want to give this divine power a name, what would it be? Knowing the potential consequence if I convert myself as Christian in 1990s in China, of course I could not say it's God. So I told her, I said, Chairman Mao? But that question kind of haunted me for decades. Because it's fascinating, if you think of human being, how come we always think there is something so mighty and powerful that we cannot see, we don't understand, can benefit everybody, and yet have the ability to completely destroy the humanity? Doesn't that sound familiar? I think right now, for people who are kind of hyping AGI, are kind of leveraging our humans' God complex. So I think, everybody should pursue their spirituality, whatever they believe, but I don't want those middlemen. Same as AI. I think for AI, if it's centralized, a few bros control this entire ecosystem, it will be a nightmare. One of my two most loved sci-fi book series, Dune, that one's Three-Body Problem. You have to read it. Frank Herbert, in the 1965, already warned us. His point is still very, very relevant today. I don't think it's AI we need to really rein AI. It's the people who are trying to convince us that AI is very dangerous, but if they do it, it will be safe. Those people we need to rein. We need to stay very, very aware. Frank Herbert said, once men turn their thinking over machines in the hope that will set us free, but then we actually just turn ourselves to the man who controls the machines. So, French philosopher and mathematician Descartes, once he said, "Condigo ergo sum," which is Latin, I think, therefore I am. When we think about wire to think, of course, I think we need to leverage the machine that's wired to think to help us to become more efficient human, to allow us to take away those mundane tasks and allow us to create, to enjoy being human a lot more, instead of having machine to take over what humans doing. So when I say wired to think, it's actually us as human. We are wired to think. So please think and do not follow blindly. Thank you very much. Thank you.